Today on Inside Utah Politics, he's Utah's first new Attorney General in a decade. We sit down with Derek Brown. Controversy over the Wasatch County clerk, why a school board race is heading to court now. Engaging the youth vote. We're meeting the team that's registered the most college voters in the state.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Hey, thanks so much for being with us, everyone. I'm Briend McElhatten. Let's go inside Utah politics today, and we begin our program with Utah electing its first new Attorney General in over a decade. The former Utah State Rep and Republican Party Chair Derek Brown will take over for outgoing Attorney General Sean Reyes. He joins me here today. Mr. Brown, welcome to Inside Utah Politics.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Brian. I appreciate it.
Congratulations on your victory, too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you've been away from public office for a while. You've been in the private sector a few years. And now you're coming back to politics. Why?
Well, I feel like it's an opportunity to make a difference. I mean, I've always felt like public service really is service. You step up, you serve, you step out. I mean, that's the way it's designed. It's not, these are not lifetime appointments, neither should they be. And so I did that when I was in the House of Representatives. I served for a period of time and then left. I worked with a couple of different senators at times, left. I was encouraged to run to be the Utah Republican Party chair, which, as we like to joke, is about as fun as having a root canal on a daily basis.
Well, I remember the convention and how many rounds we went through.
Oh, it's, yeah, conventions.
I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I wasn't this, I mean, I was in 2019 to 2021, but yeah, this year, I mean, it's a rough job. I mean, because no matter what you do, you're going to make people angry. You just have to follow your conscience, do the right thing. And so I've been in the private sector, doing a combination of law and government relations for the last half dozen years, and decided that this was an opportunity to make a difference for the state and, you know, perhaps bring something to the position that could be helpful.
So we thought this was interesting. You talked about your transition team doing town halls around the state. We don't often hear about that,
right.
Certainly in the AG's office, right? So tell me about that approach and what you're hoping to accomplish and what you're hoping to hear from people when you talk to them.
Well, one of the nice things about Utah and the system we have is that unlike Washington, D.C., where the AG is appointed or confirmed by, or nominated rather, by the president, confirmed by the Senate. Here, the AG is independently elected. You're accountable to the people who elected you. And I think there's strength in that system. So what that means is you're independent. So this position is one where you're independent, and the governor or the legislature may have ideas of what it is that you should do or lawsuits you should file or how you should do it, but ultimately, the Attorney General is accountable to the people that elected them. So I feel like doing constituent relations the same way I did when I was a legislator, but in the form of town halls to the people who elected me, just makes good sense. Because the best thing I can do is be open, be transparent, be available, and be willing to sit with whatever people may want to say, whatever criticism they have. People have strong opinions about the Attorney General's office. A lot of people don't know what the Attorney General does, but a lot of people do. And those that do tend to have strong opinions. And I'm willing and open to hear them out.
Well, that leads me to my next question. There's been a lot of controversy around Sean Reyes' term in that office. What does it take to rebuild trust and confidence in the AG's office, do you think?
Well, I think the reality is setting clear expectations. Here's what I'm going to do, and here's how it benefits Utah. And then a system of transparency. So I've been asked, for instance, am I going to release my calendar? Yes, of course I am. Am I going to be transparent in the sense that people know what I'm doing, where I am? Yes. Are we going to keep key performance indicators and measurements of how successful we are, how effective, how efficient we are? Which are just, these are the kind of metrics in the private sector that we use all the time. But I feel like if I'm transparent and available and accessible and willing to talk to the media and willing to talk to people at town halls, that with that transparency comes trust. And if you do what you said you would do and you provide metrics so people can see you're having success on behalf of Utah voters, then you have trust. I just think it's a byproduct.
Well, there have been calls from some, including lawmakers, who suggested maybe the AG's office should be appointed rather than elected.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I don't agree.
Yeah.
No, I mean, for the same reason that I think that independence, what it does is it creates accountability. So really, if you're elected, then the question really is, who are you accountable to? right? If the governor appoints you, who are you accountable to? You're accountable to the governor. There are states in the country that do it differently. One state has the AG appointed by the Supreme Court, one by the legislature. Most states, though, 43 of them do what we do, where you're elected independently. And I just think that's the best system because it does two things. It makes you accountable to the voters who put you there. And then importantly, it makes you independent from the other folks in government, which creates a system of checks and balances, even beyond just the three branches of government. And I think that's a good thing.
You're going to be very busy when you sit in that office. Utah is engaged, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 plus lawsuits with the federal government right now. It's a lot of work. That
on like the lands
on the public lands issue. Let's take that one, for example. Have you reached out to or been in contact at all with the Trump transition team on how they might plan to approach something like this?
Well, I've been working with our federal delegation because they will be our point with the transition team. But the reality is I don't know if there's any position in Utah that for whom the job description changed more drastically on election night than me, because my approach to how we solve some of these issues, and one of the things I've talked about repeatedly during the campaign is just federal government overreach. I think it's unhealthy when you have this large federal institution that just sits on Utah and tells us what to do. I think there's a natural check and balance between us and the federal government, and the way you address that as Attorney General is through litigation. But with a Republican White House, I think that we may not see as much of that. And so I think there will be more negotiation. I mean, you mentioned like the lands lawsuits. I think we do. And I think your question is our strategy going to change based on that? And the answer is yes.
Exactly. How do you foresee that changing? What's the approach going to be now, given the changes in Washington?
Well, my hope is that we have individuals in the administration that are willing to work with us and talk with us. I mean, because one of the biggest issues we had, I mean, you know, you talked about this in the sense of the office and communication and being transparent. It's communication and having open dialogue, and that's how you would address some of the lands issues. I mean, our state is 2/3 owned and controlled by the federal government. And one of the biggest problems with that is we have these mid-level bureaucrats, well, I'm sure nice people, but people who, for the most part, aren't here in Utah and who don't really have an incentive to communicate with us. So it isn't a give and take like I think it should be. And so my hope is that with a Republican White House, we have administration appointees who are in there that we can have an open dialogue with, because that's how you solve problems, is through an open dialogue of the issues.
And so maybe that's the answer to my next question, but when it comes to litigation, when it comes to regulation and how things have been done in Utah for the past decade, is your approach going to be much different?
There will be some changes, and part of it is because we have this Supreme Court decision involving a concept called Chevron deference, where I mean, this is a sea change in administrative law, where the courts have always deferred to the agencies to essentially let them do whatever they want, unless it's what the courts call unreasonable.
And the Supreme Court reined that in.
Completely reined it in. I mean, they completely upended almost 40 years of administrative law and basically said to Congress, you now have to go back and do your job. You can't just delegate it over to the agencies and let them do it and just hope that they'll do your job for you. So this changes our strategy, because I think we will have more litigation specifically focused on the issues that impact Utah. I mean, one of them, just as an example, are EPA regulations specifically designed to shut down power plants in Utah. And this is the very moment when power demand is going through the roof. I mean, with data centers and artificial intelligence, I mean, the need we have in the state of Utah for power, I mean, it's increasing exponentially. And so we have a federal government trying to shut down our access to the power. So those are the kinds of big issues that we'll be working on.
Okay. Derek Brown, thank you very much for your time.
Hey, thank you.
Good luck to you as you move back into the public office there. We appreciate
I appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
Very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, still ahead here on Inside Utah Politics, the bathroom battle makes it to Capitol Hill. How lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are weighing in on this. We'll be right back. House Speaker Mike Johnson says transgender women won't be able to use women's restrooms at the Capitol building. That announcement comes on the heels of South Carolina Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace introducing a resolution to ban them. It comes as Delaware sends the first ever trans woman to serve there, a Democrat Representative-elect Sarah McBride. Some of their parties seem to be standing by them today.
Bullying a member of Congress. This is what we're doing.
Just got to Congress. She's going to use whatever restroom that she needs to use.
A man is a man and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman.
Sarah McBride will not be using our restrooms.
In a statement, McBride calls Mace's push a blatant attempt from far right-wing extremists to distract from the fact that they have no real solutions to what Americans are facing. Utah State University has filed to join a lawsuit against the Mountain West Conference at the urging of state leaders like Governor Spencer Cox, House Speaker Mike Schultz, and Senate President J. Stewart Adams. 11 players from 5 universities, including USU's Kaylee Ray, claim the conference commissioner publicly admitted that San Jose State's Blair Fleming is a transgender woman, which the plaintiffs say violates Title IX laws. Now, Fleming has not come out and identified as transgender. The filing seeks to rescind the wins awarded to SJSU after USU and other universities have forfeited their regular season matches in volleyball. Counties across the state have certified their election results now, but there's a pretty big hang-up to tell you about. It's a school board race in Wasatch County where the county clerk disqualified the candidate that appeared to be winning. But today, a judge is telling the state to hold off on certifying the results until the case can move through the courts. Our Kate Gardner has more.
Tom Stone says ahead of the election he submitted a financial disclosure late, but never heard anything from the clerk's office until 9 days after the election. He was winning his race when he got a letter that said he was disqualified. Now the lawsuit claims that there were other steps that the clerk's office should have taken under Utah law to make sure that this was avoided. This is that letter.
And she hurried and sent a letter saying, "You're disqualified, it's over." And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Tom Stone recently decided to run for the Wasatch County School District's Board of Education.
I just believe in giving back. I believe that, we're here to help each other out.
He says he feels like that might not be the case at the clerk's office.
My opponent, as well as every other person in this race, had been receiving reminders, had been receiving an email from the county clerk saying, hey, just remember it's coming. And then the day of, hey, it's due today. And I never received any of that. I've been completely off that radar.
He says he was disqualified for a financial disclosure he submitted 2 days late.
I am the reason why he filed it late. My wife went into preterm labor and I had to dump my other kids on my parents.
Tate Stone says while they acknowledge their mistake, they still have lots of questions for the clerk's office.
She was sending reminders to the other candidate, helpful information to make sure that the other candidate got his in exactly right and on time. And if it was late, the law clearly states she's supposed to reach out, give him a 24-hour grace period, fine him $100, and get this resolved.
Attorney Todd Weiler says under Utah law, a candidate can be disqualified for missing deadline, but that usually happens before Election Day.
It talks about notifying the other candidate and removing their name from the ballot, blacking it out if possible.
He says he's never heard of a case like this.
And this one's very different because it was 9 days after the election and after he had ostensibly won the election. And so our lawsuit will ask a district court to basically nullify the disqualification.
Until a judge makes that decision.
Something that's unprecedented and frankly a little disturbing to know that votes were counted when somebody may or may not have been disqualified.
Other county leaders are starting to look into what, if anything, they can do.
I think that the people's voice should be heard. If the votes were counted and a person won, the majority of people's voices should be heard.
I started reaching out to the clerk for comment last week, and I'm still waiting a reply. Reporting from Heber, Kate Garner, ABC4 News.
Still to come from us, engaging the youth vote. The winners of Utah's Campus Cup share the lessons they learned driving their classmates to the polls.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Welcome back to Inside Utah Politics. With Utah's county-level results largely finalized, we're taking some time today to drill down on an often ignored section of voters, the youth vote. Joining me today, we have the winners of the Campus Cup, a state-level initiative to register college voters. This is the team from Utah Valley University. We have John Kwong and Chloe Cook. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks for having us.
So first of all, congratulations on winning the Cup. For folks at home who might not be familiar with the competition, tell me a little bit about what it was.
Yeah, so it's run by the Lieutenant Governor's Office, and so it's a competition between all the universities in Utah of who can register the most students to vote. And yeah, this year we registered the most.
So what did you guys do in order to get these folks to register? Did you pop up at the local stores? You go to the local swig and hang out? What did you guys do
We should have tried that.
Yeah, see? Listen.
Yeah, there you go.
Wouldn't have been a bad idea.
Yeah.
So what were your efforts? How did you get people to sign up?
Yeah, so a lot of it was a lot of outreach into the halls. A lot of students, especially UVU is a commuter school, and so a lot of students, they're just here for classes. They don't, they don't really want to stay long on campuses. They want to be on campus for as short as possible. And so it was a lot of outreaching in the hallways. We also partnered on a bunch of events. You can talk about that as well.
John's at the Herbert Institute, so that's we're from two different departments. So I'm the Civic Engagement Chair on UVUSA. So he's on this great, he did an internship and now he's here. But so my responsibilities on UVUSA is to do different events. So we did the presidential election watch party and the vice president election watch party, where we just had free pizza and some games for people to play and just come and watch the debate so that people can, get more educated on who they're voting for and all of that, and also to encourage them to register to vote, and people that were at those events, we could do that. We also do at UVU, we have Wolverine Wednesday, which every Wednesday students can come and get free pizza for lunch. And we hosted one of the Wolverine Wednesdays and were able to advertise voting there, as well as just tabling in the hallways. We got a ballot box on campus.
We did, yeah.
And that was a great event.
Yeah.
Neat. I feel like pizza's been the main theme there.
Yeah, it's surprising
really
the amount of students that will come for pizza. Yeah.
As an RA, I know for a fact to get people to come to my events, as long as you have pizza, you got a good shot.
It's as a senior, I'm really tired of pizza. Yeah. I feel like I'm starting to not like it anymore.
Yeah. Guys, get rid of the pizza. I'm just kidding. So you guys are young voters. So why do you think, broadly speaking, young people tend not to come out to vote? What do you think? Why do folks stay home?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just time. I think, a lot of students, not only are they taking classes as full-time students, but they're also working. A lot of them, 30 hours or more. And, so it's really, for us, it was about bringing resources to them and bringing the process to them and making it easier, making sure that, they didn't have to plan out certain, a time in their schedule to have to come out, and we could actually just bring that to them and just make the process easier on them.
Yeah, a lot of them, in the halls, it's just hey, stop by, scan this QR code, and it took less than 30 seconds to just get them registered or check their voter registration. But yeah.
Yeah,
I had a lot of students that I've talked to of just voter registration and all of that they were just well, I just don't know what's going on with the candidates, and if I did vote, I would just vote along my party, because they don't a lot of it is they don't have time to look into the politics.
Sure.
And so they're oh, I'll just stay out of it because I don't know what's going on, and so I don't want to use my voice wrong, is a lot of what it is. So a lot of it was talking to them, and I'm don't feel you have to just vote your party and go in and do that. Even a little bit of research of just one topic that you care about, of your voice does matter, and it's important to get young voters out there. So it's you don't have to know everything.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you guys learned from these voters that you engage with, because the youth vote, current estimates nationally, 42% turnout, which is the lowest since the year of 2000, and 2020 had a record turnout of 55%. So it kind of went down again. What did you hear from folks? Were they engaged with this election, or as you said, maybe I didn't know anything, I just kind of want to stay out of it?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely had some of those students who were oh, I want to stay out of it. But I think a lot of them, they were engaged. They knew how important this election was going to be. But then again, it was they didn't really have the time to kind of set aside to register to vote or educate themselves, like Chloe said, on the topics. And so, what we did, we brought a bunch of the candidates onto campus as well. And so, making sure that students, once again, bring the resources to them, make sure that they have the opportunity to learn about the candidates, the issues, and yeah, just make it easier for them to be able to to vote.
Yeah, a really big push that we had too was just local government, because people really don't realize they get so caught up in the presidential election, and it's like, yes, it's important, but it's also like where you're going to see the difference, especially in Utah, is in your local government. And a lot of people don't even know about like bills that have been being passed like up at the state that I'm like, this directly affects you as a UVU student. And so like explaining that, because I also work at UVU and it's changed our department so much, and it's like, so a lot of it for us was like, how do we not just get them to focus on the presidential election? A lot of why I think a lot of students also kind of avoided it was because this specific presidential election was scary for a lot of students.
Sure.
And a lot of students had a lot of anxiety surrounding it, especially at UVU. And so I think a lot of them too were just like, I just, hands off of it, I can't pay attention to it because it's gonna give me anxiety.
How excited were local candidates to get involved and meet the students when you reached out to them and said, hey, here's an opportunity for these kids to know who you are?
Yeah.
How excited were they to jump in on that?
Yeah, no, they were very like.
Yeah, we reached out, my team for UVUSA, and obviously partnering with you guys, but some other people on UVUSA reached out to a bunch of like city local politicians that were running for different like city council positions, and we did a whole panel and had all of them come, and just a bunch of questions that especially like UVU students and college students have, and we just interviewed them for like an hour and a half, and it was great.
So we had, you know, obviously you look at the election, you think about the top issues that were pertaining to voters. You talk about the economy and inflation. You talk about the issue of abortion and things like that. When you spoke to young voters, what were some of the issues that you think resonated with them and got them more engaged when you spoke to them?
Yeah, when I was talking to students out in the hallways, we found out a lot of them were kind of concerned about the economy, and they just weren't happy with how the economy was under this current presidency, and so that I think was a big motivator for a lot of students.
Yeah, economy is definitely a big one, especially in Utah County. Our housing prices can be really tough for a lot of students, and that's why a lot of students choose to live at home or are in not most ideal living situations because it's just cheap rent. So that was a really big one. A lot of ones that I ran into specifically at UVU was LGBTQ and just being able to maintain there. Like, I read a statistic that Salt Lake is like actually in like the top like 15% of safe cities for LGBTQ, and so especially you wouldn't really expect that in Utah, and I think a lot of students didn't realize that and wanted to maintain it.
Interesting, interesting. So for politicians who are trying to engage the young voter, what's your pitch to them? Why should they come out and talk to young people? Why is it important?
I'd say, you know, these are going to be the future leaders, right? These are the people that are going to be engaged, and they're going to one day be, you know, the next leaders of people making policy. And you know, it's important to engage with them now and hear, you know, what they think is important, and you know how you can invest in them now. But,
Chloe, your pitch?
A lot of students really care. Like, a lot of students, they really want to care, but they don't know how to care and they don't know where it's at. And having that like face-to-face of like having someone even just like walk around on campus and be like, yeah, I'm running for this, and this is kind of like what I stand for, this is what I want to do. Specifically, if you like have a plan, distributing that plan to students, they'll latch onto it.
Put it in a QR code and give them some free pizza.
Exactly.
What QR code? Everyone's tired of the QR code.
Yeah, we're going to take a break from that.
Fair enough. John, Chloe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, still to come, more Inside Utah Politics is coming up after the break. Stay with us.
All right, that does it for today's Inside Utah Politics. Don't forget, if you have any local political stories you'd like to see, reach out to us. You can email InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow along with me on social media, on X at Briend Reports, and on Instagram. Just search for Briend McElhatten. And you can find ABC4 on social media too to follow along the news wherever you happen to be. And while you're at it, you can download the ABC4 News app. We are always on. Thanks so much for being with us, everybody. We'll see you right back here next week.